Hey everybody, Dan here for Comic Frontline, and this is going to be a review of is it, Volume 5 of Love and Rockets. This is House of the Raging Women. All right, so I have been catching up on these. What had happened with Love and Rockets for me is that I read these trades back in the day. Came across the first one and really fell in love with the book. Uh, I believe at the time it was perhaps I had been reading the big two for years, and this really offered something different in the same way that the Spirit did, Concrete did, Elementals did. There was a different flavor after so many years of reading, uh, I guess, more big two comics, which I still love and enjoy when they're done well. But uh, again, when I came across Love and Rockets, it wasn't. I do like the art, and I think it's very well suited for the material. Uh, Jamie's art is phenomenal, and Gilbert's art is great, very expressive, uh, and but more so than even that, just the writing, the storytelling, the characterization, uh, the pacing, the structure of the story, and I guess in the fact that they're not reliant on the next big threat. It kind of helps a book like this for a reader like me stand apart in the fact that they can tell almost any type of story and they're not stuck with the trope of the next big bad that they're facing. Um, which again, when done right, is fantastic, but sometimes we get a bit of recycling in that type of story. So I'm going to actually, since it is a whole graphic novel, not just like a little single issue, I'll flip through it a little to kind of give you some thoughts as to what I liked about it in particular, because any Love and Rockets collection is going to be a 5-star book for me, 5 out of 5. Um, so I'll state that right there, right here at the beginning. Uh, we had the first story being La Tonya, and I can't claim to have the best Hispanic pronunciation of everything. So if I am at all not doing this correctly in pronunciation of any particular term or even name, uh, quite often in the Love and Rockets books, uh, Jaime will, which is one of the brothers, uh, Jaime and Gilbert Hernandez, uh, they have sometimes at the bottom like a little pronunciation key for how to pronounce certain names or words, or even a translation on occasion. Um, so Latonia might mean the queen because she is a female wrestler who, I guess, by the point of this story, has kind of went into semi-retirement, and she's somewhat of an adventurer beyond being a female wrestler. Um, so this story goes on to tell the tale of another female midget wrestler, and they call them midget wrestlers. I'm not being derogatory. That was the term that was always used. If you want to say little people wrestling at this point, okay. Yeah, but the little monster was another wrestler who was on tour with her. So they kind of tell a story of that. I mean, it's hard to really touch on all the characters that they touch on in the book because you're really exposed to a wide variety of really rich characters. So it's hard to encapsulate that all. Um, Beau Marie, that's another character within this. Uh, but again, the story is just very well executed, well paced. Um, Jaime does an especially good job of spotting blacks. Um, it's just, like I said, a masterpiece of a book. Um, and he goes into a little bit of a kind of just a two-pager here, which I'm going to kind of show, which kind of touches on the wrestler Adrian Adonis, who I remember watching as a kid. Um, kind of like a little bio. I know that recently there was a one done on Andre the Giant. I like this little panel here where he's kind of naming some of the wrestlers. You can see King Kong Bundy and Dusty Rhodes and Adrian Adonis himself. Some of the guys who I, again, recall. Abdullah the Butcher. So, this is just a very, actually it's how many pages? It's more than 2 pages, but it's, I guess, 5 pages, 6 pages, no, 2, 4, 5 pages. Enjoyable. Again, especially for me being a wrestling fan as well. Then we go to An American in Palomar, which, again, Gilbert mainly is known for doing these stories in this fictional town called Palomar, which is kind of like a, I'm not going to say a third world, but, you know, it's not modern in its technology or information of what's going on in the rest of the world. So there's a very big charm that goes into Palomar. Lots of fantastic characters throughout this town of Palomar. Luba is from, I guess, the initial Gilbert story in Love and Rockets #1 that really didn't have much to do with what she would become and the concentration we get in Palomar. I think from, again, just judging by these collections, which is what I was reading for, by the second collection, we're more entrenched in Palomar and Luba's new, I'm not going to say identity, but the new incarnation of Luba that we see throughout the books of Palomar. Here they are, kind of chomping down on some fried babosas, which seem to be big slugs that are indigenous to this area. And you can see, you know, there's a girl carrying the fried slugs for sale. You know, it's kind of like, again, a very charming type of community that he's built within Palomar. And An American in Palomar is very critically acclaimed, and I can see why. As I've, you know, again, loved most of the, well, all of the Love and Rocket stuff that I've read. There's been the occasion where they'll have like a just a one-pager that's all in Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish, so those I might try to like scratch my head a little bit on. But again, overall, just a very, very enjoyable read. Let's see, An American in Palomar is a pretty good size story, so that runs. I don't know how this was all broken up into earlier issues. But I like the fact that these original trades from the late 90s or mid to late 90s uh, kind of gives you some Jaime, some Gilbert, and goes back and forth a bit. Boys Will Be Boys is next, again by Gilbert. I'm almost afraid to mention any of these names because, again, they went to great lengths to provide the pronunciations on the bottom, and I'm sure I do not get those pronunciations right, even though I try to adjust myself to do so. But I guess it mainly deals this story with, well, let me get him in here, Heraclio. And it's a nice, well-done story. Young Locas is next. Locas, I know, is Crazy Women, so I know that at least. Oh, well, I guess I should mention Hopi and Maggie were, I guess, for the most part, the main characters, or at least the most popular characters from Jamie's Locas. If Palomar is going to be Gilbert's big thing throughout the 11 Rockets run, Locas is going to be Jaime's big thing throughout the run. So let's give you kind of a little look here. I guess this panel might be better. Hopi and Maggie. Hopi. Oops. Let's see here. Hopi. Maggie. She's ripping her pants because she's putting on weight. Which I know there was a little controversy, I guess, throughout the fandom of Love and Rockets at the time for Maggie putting on weight. But except for the inclusion of, I guess, rocket ships and advanced technology, which was more heavily peppered in the initial stories, I guess Jaime really drifted more towards a slice of life, as they call it in comics, type of story. So, I guess in some form of trying to give a lot of realism, Maggie put on weight and she really didn't take it off. So, let's see. This is kind of like a rereading, incidentally, for me, because I think, okay, I was going to say this, and I don't think I got to it. I was reading the initial collections, including this one, and then at a certain point, the collections were done, and I was reading single issues, but being that I was not getting it as it came out, it was, back reading for me. I had missed, or I hadn't been able to find a back issue of a certain Love and Rockets comic. I think it was like issue 32 with a chicken on the cover. And at that point, there was no eBay, there was no internet to go just, look it up and buy an issue. At that point, I was out in comic stores looking for that issue and could not find it. So my Love and Rockets reading, I continued to buy whatever issues I guess I discovered it by, maybe 37 or 38. So then at that point, I was ordering it through previews, but I wasn't going to read it until I could find that issue 32. And I guess a few years went by, and then I eventually found it. But by then I was reading other stuff. So at this point, I have the trades, I have those issues, and then they started putting out, I guess annually, Love and Rockets: A New Story. There was a whole bunch of mini-series in between that, um, all of which I was buying. Penny Century, Luba had her own story. There was a whole bunch of stories that were all in mini comic form by Fantagraphics, mini comics, mini series form by Fantagraphics. And again, I have them all, but I just have to kind of find them. So I will be reading all these collections and all the issues. I have that all together and the new stories. So I just want to give it one read through from the beginning because, again, it is rich with a lot of characters. And I do want to have it all straight in my head. I actually do have a trading card set that's pretty rare from Love and Rockets trading card set, which I could actually use that to jog my memory of characters. But I wanted to read through the stories all, semi in a row. I've been reading other stuff in between, and I'll have reviews rather of that. But for now, I'm just going to go through this one. All right. So that story, this Lucas story is pretty long, and none of it's really laborious reading. It really reads very smoothly, very quickly, and it's just great stuff. So could help that it has that can't put it down factor. I was recently talking to my friend Cameron, who had never really gotten into the book. He'd seen it here and there and kind of flipped through it. And he said it doesn't seem like the art, which seems so important to me, is something that I would be drawn to the book for. And I had to say to him that I do like the art, but when we talk about the mainstream comics, most of the time I collect for art because I don't see a lot of great writing. And again, they are kind of dependent on that next big bad thing. And, I've read it for a very large number of years. So at this point, stuff like this becomes just, again, very refreshing. And then I also discussed with him the fact that I've been rereading it. It holds up to me. But again, at the time, when I did get into those indies, it was a kind of a great departure from what was out there by now. So this is Love and Rockets is a work that has undoubtedly influenced a lot of great stuff that we have now. So to go back to this, I told Cameron, might seem like if Star Wars came out today. At the time, it was revolutionary, and even today, it's a quality work, but it just may not bowl someone over in the same way that Star Wars did when it came out. I can't really say that for sure with Love and Rockets because it still bowls me over, but I'm just wondering, for him, if he tried to pick it up now and had read a bunch of great stuff that's come out since then, if it'll seem like the departure it did for me. Again, I've read a lot of great stuff since, and I go back and started reading it from the beginning, and it still, stands out to me as higher quality than most publications. All right, then we get House of the Raging Women, which is kind of the title, but it's also a story in here. Goes again into some of the female wrestling. Let's see. And I do like how on occasion there's some Gilbert characters making a little appearance. right where my thumb is here. Some Gilbert characters thrown in for good measure. You can tell that they were having a lot of fun making this, making these stories. Okay, then we get Holidays in the Sun. Gilbert, who also goes by Beto sometimes. But kind of like a prison story. Ties into a previous story in Palomar. Next, we have Love Bites, again with Heraclio and his pint-sized wife, Carmen. And it is another one that I just enjoyed immensely. Now, here was an interesting story. Okay, The Adventures of Maggie and the Mechanic. Maggie the Mechanic. And it kind of deals with the characters that were in the beginning. Rand Race, which was a love interest. Maggie, they're in a excavation, futuristic technology. And I'm going to spoil this right now. So if you don't want this to be spoiled, you can fast forward a little bit. At the end of this, Maggie is on a bus and she chucks this Maggie the Mechanic comic, and she's kind of, what does she say here? Oh yeah, right, I'm sure. And she's like the comic is so absurd. And again, as I mentioned, they had that sci-fi element in the beginning. Then they kind of, or Jaime, not they, Jaime, kind of drifted it way more into the slice of life venue. So that story is almost as if he's saying that was those earlier mechanic stories was actually just a comic in the now Locus universe. They still reference Rand Race and all that, so it did really happen. But I don't know. That story just struck me as a commentary on it, them trying to get away from the previous incarnation. And then we have kind of a cover gallery they give us. These were in color when they originally came out. And that pretty much does it. Okay, so this was, again, Volume 5. I already picked up Volume 6. Well, picked it up from my bookshelf. So I'm starting to read that one. I guess I'll do a review of that next. So they do have other Love and Rockets complete collections. I think they kind of separate the brothers at that point, and I do prefer having them together, switching back and forth. I do like my original collections of Love and Rockets. Again, this was Volume 5 in this collection from the mid to late 90s. I mean, yeah, mid to late, well, let's see. When was this printed? I'll solve that right now. 88. So that's what I was saying, mid to late 80s for these collections. So those are my preferred Love and Rockets collections. Can't say enough good things. And thanks for sitting through that lengthy review. And feel free to check out my own channel, Argo Comics, ARGO Comics. And keep coming back to Comic Frontline for all your comics news, reviews, and entertainment.